Good evening. Hope you are all doing well. We're learning Maseches, Chagigah, Daf Tes Vav and Tes Zayin of Aleph. We'll be stopping at the Mishnah 4 lines from the bottom. Thank you for the exciting exuberance from the back table. I appreciate it. Today as well, we're going to be learning in Yonei Seser, but just of course on the very high level that we are, on the very low level that we are able to grasp it. So let us get started. We're on Daf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, 7 lines down. Tana Rabbanan, Ma'aseh Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, Shahel Omer al Gav Mala behar Habayis, and he was standing on one of the steps of Har Habayis. Ve'o ben Zoma velo Amad milafanav, and Ben Zoma was sitting, and so much was he lost in thought that he didn't even stand up when Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya walked by, which was uncharacteristic. Ben Zoma, of course, knows halacha, that when there is a Talmud Chacham who is within Daled Amos, whatever the din is, we are very firm about it. When a Rav gets up, we were just at a wedding, the Rav at the front of the room gets up. You don't have to stand up for that technically. It's only when it's within Daled Amos. It's nice it's appropriate to do so, but halachically speaking, he knew the din. So Ben Zoma was very close and he didn't stand up. But the Rebbe wasn't insulted. Rabbi Shua ben Chananya said, Amar lo, me'ayin ula ayin Ben Zoma. From where and to where are you? In other words, you're lost in thought. What is going on? So Amar lo, well, very simple. I'm lost in the following quandary. I'm just simply trying to distinguish between the upper waters and the lower waters. And the distinction between the two is only that of 3 etzbos, 3 finger breadths, and that's it. We see the word merachefes as it's used by water, that the Ruach Elokim was hovering over the water. And as well, we have another idea, so he felt that these two ideas are connected, this pasuk and this idea about a Yonah, and therefore he estimated he was misha'er that it was approximately 3 finger breadths. Last short line, Tes Vav Amud Amar lehen Rabbi Yoshua letalmidav. Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya says to his students, Adayin ben Zoma mi bachutz. He's still out. So this language is very particular language. It's not stam. What does it mean that he's out? Is he still out in Pardes land? What does it mean that he's lost in this area? Anyways, Michdi, let's analyze his idea to see if he's even right. When was that pasuk written? That's very early in Chumash. B'yom Harishon, that was written by the first day of creation. Havdalah ben b'yom sheni hu d'havai, and the separation was on the second day. The separation of the waters was on the second day. V'hi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. How much is the separation between them? Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov kimelonima. It's only the distance of the width of one hair. What is that? A couple of microns. It's nothing. It's very, very small. The Rabbanan Amrei ki guda de gamla. It's like the planks of wood on a bridge that you have to. They're not conjoined, but they're lying right next to one another. There's barely any gap between them. Mar Zutra, v'itema Ravasi Amar, kitrei glime deprise ahadade. It's like 2 sheets of cloth, one on top of the other. There's really nothing separating them. Some say kitrei kase deschife ahadade, like 2 cups, one that is inserted inside the other. Now, when we go to the store to buy cups for our house, we buy in Jewel. They sell this pack of 600 cups. They come in 6 100-cup sleeves. All of them are stacked perfectly inside. They're all manufactured. They all fit perfectly. Theirs wasn't exactly manufactured, but they're making an approximation that they're very, very close together. So he disagreed. All right, that's part 1 of the Gemara. Let's go back to the story of Hapardes. We're a third of the way down, 5-6 lines into the wide lines. Acher kitzeis benetios. Acher, we'll see how he got his name. It's not the most complimentary terminology, as we will soon see. That Acher was kitzeis benetios. He cut down saplings in the orchard. Of course, the orchard is Pardes. Pardes is the story from yesterday's Gemara, above our pay grade. Olav akasu omer al titenes picha lechatias besarcha. You should not allow your mouth to sin for your flesh. What was the problem that he said? So we had seen yesterday that the problem with what happened with him in the Pardes was that he said that it seemed that there were chas v'shalom, that there were shtei reshuyos, because Metatron or Metatron, as it's translated in the English, which is like literally transformers. That's what it's. If you look back yesterday's blot, it's Metatron in Hebrew, and if you look in the English, it looks like Metatron. So who knows? Maybe there was a Jewish writer at the Transformers company. So that's what the Gemara says earlier, is that the problem was that he saw Metatron sitting down, and he saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was standing up, although he didn't look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu directly, God forbid, because that's what happened to some of the others who were with him. And that's what he said, is maybe they're shtei reshuyos. So that's what the Gemara says here. All of akasav omer al titen es picha lachatias bezarcha. Don't talk, because what you said was bad for you. So here are the details. Chaza mitatron di isyahava le rishusa lemesav, that Mitatron was given permission to sit down to do what? Lemichtav zach v'sad Yisrael, to write down the merits of the Jewish people. So he was, again, all of this is anthropomorphism at its best. So he was sitting up in heaven, and he was sitting on the ground writing the zechuyos of Bnei Israel. Omar Gemira, this was his flaw. He had said, we have a tradition that indicates, unlike what I'm looking at. Our tradition is Delamala, up in heaven, lo have lo yeshiva, there's no sitting down, velo sachrus, there's no competition, velo oref, there's no backs of necks, velo ifui, and there's no tiredness. Okay, some of that we can understand again on the basic level. Maybe there's really two gods, one of them being Mitatron, and one of them being a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Avkul Mitatron umachiyuhu shitin pulse denura. They pulled out Mitatron and they punished him for what happened. Why did they punish Mitatron? We'll see momentarily, but they gave him 60 lashes of fire. That's what it looks like. Pulse, I wonder if that's where the word pulse comes from, because it seems from the context that way, but I didn't see that anywhere. Just seems what the word looks like. Amrule, they said to him, to Mitatron, my taima, why is it that kichazise, when you saw him up in heaven, when you saw him up in the paradise, lo kamas mikame, you should have stood up, not because he deserves your kavod, you're a malach Mitatron, and Acher doesn't deserve your kavod, but you created a scenario whereby you left the impression that maybe there were shtei reshuyos. You shouldn't have done that. Anyways, and as a consequence for Acher, he was punished by having all of his merits taken away from him. And then the famous Gemara that says about Acher, Shuvu banim shovavim, we know that we all have an obligation. We all have the capacity to do tshuva, chutz mi Acher. Everyone has the ability to do tshuva except for Acher, except for Elisha ben Avuya. Amar, ho'el v'itrad hahu gavra me'ahu alma. He's talking about himself. Since this person is no longer going to get into that world, lepuk, I'm going to go out, I'm going to not be frum anymore. Lishane b'hai alma, and I'll get my hana in this world. That's what the Gemara says. Big discussion here. Why is that a reasonable response? The Torah should be good in and of itself. It's a value to keep halacha, even without the reward. The famous stories of the Hasidic Rebbes, I'll give you all of my schar, just let me do the mitzvah. So why was he any different? There are long arichus about this in some of the commentaries. Nafak Acher letarbusra. So then he joined a very bad culture. Nafak Ashkach Zona. He found a woman who was a prostitute, Tava, and he was interested in being with her. Amar Leva Lav Elisha ben Avuyat. Aren't you Elisha ben Avuya? This is not right. You look like the bearded rabbi from the shul. What are you doing asking for znus? So on Shabbos, Akar Pugla mi Mishra b'Shabbos v'Yavel. He pulled a radish out of the ground and handed it to her. Amra Acherhu. This must be somebody else. And this is how he earned his name, by lying, by being Mechal Shabbos, and by a zona giving up. You must be somebody else. You're no longer Elisha ben Avuya, because he had removed his own name by saying he's going out the Tar Basra, and he left. And we'll see soon there are some deeper character flaws here that led to this. Fine. Story time. Halfway down, it's all stories, but a story time halfway down. Tesvav Menalef Shal Acher Esrav Meir LaAchar Sheyatzel L'Tar B'Sura. Acher Rav Elisha ben Avuya, he asked a question to Rav Meir after the time he went off the derech. Amar le Mai Dechsiv Gam Es Ze L'Umas Ze Asa HaElokim, that Hashem made things that are opposite one another. So Amar lo, Rav Meir responded, Kol Masha Bara Kadosh Baruch Hu Bara Kenegdo. Everything that Kadosh Baruch Hu made, he made in pairs with equals and opposites. Bara Harim, Bara Gevos. He made mountains and he made hills. Bara Yamim, Bara Naharos. And he made oceans and he made rivers. Amar lo, Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya says back to him, Rabbi Akiva Rabcha lo Amar Kach. Your Rabbi Akiva does not say that. He has a different shot in what's going on here. What's the different shot that Rabbi Akiva says? He says, Ella, bara tzadikim, bara rishai, that there are righteous people and there are evil people. Bara Gan Eden, bara Gehenim. Kadosh Baruch Hu created Gan Eden. He created a place for the righteous in the next world, and Bara Gehenim, a place for the evil in the next world. Kol echad be'echad yesh lo shnei chalakim, and everybody has two portions. And if in fact you're zoche, echad beGan Eden be'echad beGehenim, everyone has two portions. So let's say for your Beinani, which we usually view ourselves in the category of Beinani. So there's an element of us that will be zoche to Gehenim, unfortunately, because we're not perfect. And there's an element of us that will be zoche to tzidkos, to Gan Eden. So says the Gemara, zoche tzaddik, if in fact you merit to be a proper tzaddik where you don't do any averos. So we view this as such a lofty level. This should be really what we're striving for every day, is that we should be able to keep halacha just basic. basic keep halacha, set up our lives so we can be successful. But if in fact we reach that plateau of tzidkus, then natal chelkov and natal chaveru began eden. Not only do you get your portion, but you also get the portion of your friend, the one who's a rasha, right? Because they're counterparts. That's how Rabbi Akiva understood the pasuk of Zelu Umazeh. So if I'm a tzaddik, so I'll take the portion of a rasha who's already not going to Gan Eden because he's a rasha. And the same is true by a rasha. He's chayav rasha 2/3 of the way down. This rasha, he will not only get his own portion, but the tzaddik who's not going to Gehenim, he'll also get his portion of Gehenim as well. Amar of Misharshia Mikra. What is the pasuk that supports this idea that Rabbi Akiva understood in the pasuk of Zel Umazeh? Gabe tzadikim tziv lachem be'artzachem Mishnah Yirshu. Mishnah from the word Shnaim, you'll get a double portion, which is what we saw above. You'll get a double portion of Gan Eden. Gabe Rishayim tziv Mishnah Shivron Shivra. That you will get doubles of tragedy, and that's what it means that they'll get double portions of Gehenim. Another question. Shal Acher Es Rabbi Meir la'achar sheyatza l'tar b'sra. Elisha ben Avuya again asks a question to Reb Meir after he was off the derech, and he said, "My dichsiv, what's pshat in the pasuk? Lo ye'archena zahav zechuchis v'tamrusa klipaz, that you're not able to value gold and glass and its replacement in gold. What does this mean? Amar lo, this is what Reb Meir says back to Acher. Elu divrei Torah shekashan liknosam kikli zahav u'klipaz. This is referring to divrei Torah that's as difficult to acquire as is gold and as is kikli zahav and klipaz, different types of gold. The nochen la'avdan kikli zechuchis, and at the same time that it's hard to get a kinyan on Torah, it's also easy to forget it because just like glass, it drops on the floor, it's in shards. Amar lo, Acher says back to Rav Meir, that's not correct. Rabbi Akiva lo amar kach. Rabbi Akiva had a different shot in the pasuk about the glass and the gold. Elama kli zahav ukli zechuchis. Just like by gold and by glass, that even if they break, they can be repaired. So says the Gemara, Af Talmud Chacham, Afal Pisha Sarach yesh lo takana. Oh, who's talking? It's Acher talking. Acher, the rasha. Acher, the one who said, "I'm done with mitzvos." He says a Talmud Chacham who loses his path, Shesarach yesh lo takana. So Rav Meir turns the tables. He flips around and looks at him with a shock on his face. Amar lo afatacha zorbach. You're the one telling me pshat in the pasuk that if you're sarach, that you can't come back. Come back. You're giving me pshat in the pasuk, Acher. It doesn't make any sense. Amar lo, he says, no, but you weren't there. Because when he was in the Pardes, what did he hear? Kvar shamati me'achorei pargot. I heard from beyond the curtain, shuva banim shovavim chutz me'acher. That he was given a permanent punishment of never being able to properly return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this kept him off the derech. Tanu Rabbanan, 8-9 lines from the bottom. Tesvav Manala. There's a story where Acher was riding a donkey on Shabbos. Unbelievably, even though he's already off the derech, he's literally violating halacha. It's an Isser D'Rabbanan to ride an animal on Shabbos because we're afraid that you may break off a stick to hit the animal, but the riding of the horse is still Isser. It's like Zer D'Rabbanan. He's riding it on Shabbos, and Reb Meir is like literally talking to him and learning as he's violating Shabbos. Unbelievable. So Amar Lo Meir, Acher says to him, Meir, Chazor la'acharecha, take a step back. Shekvar shi'arti be'ikve sus. I've been counting the footsteps of my sus. I know how long each stride is. Ad kan tchum Shabbos. The Rebbe is sitting on the horse. He's driving through the Tchum Shabbos with his horse, and he says to the Talmud, "For you got to keep halacha." The hypocrisy of this Rebbe. Amar lo, a little bit of a chutzpah. You're also breaking halacha. Afatacha zorbach. You should back up also. You're not allowed to leave your Tchum. That's bechlal l'shayla in Maseches Shabbos. What? Yeah, it is in the broader term, but yeah, it's also true. I was that language. Yeah, I know, because we learned about this in Maseches Shabbos. If you go out of your tchum, it's machlokes tanaim, I believe. If you go out of your tchum, what happens? Yeah. Are you allowed to hook back in, or do you have a new? I can't remember the details. It's been a long time ago, and I have PTSD from Erevin, so I don't remember all the details. So either way, he says you should come back. So Amar Le Acher says back to Rav Meir, it doesn't matter. But lo kvar amarti loch, didn't I already tell you? Kvar shamati me'acharei apargo tshuva banim shovim chutz me'acher. Rav Meir didn't want to hear this. He had such a hard time hearing that Acher couldn't do tshuva. So he took matters into his own hands, grabs him by the collar, takve, he grabbed him by the collar, ayle lebei medrasha, and he brought Acher into the beis medrash. His hope was that he would go over to a child and find out what psukim they were learning. So Amar Le, lianuka, he says to a child who's learning, psuk li psukha, tell me what pasuk you're learning. Now this wasn't stam. They used to do this as a message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would align the needs of the person with the pasuk that the child is learning. So this did not work out the way Rav Meir had hoped. Because Amar Lo, what did the child say back to the two of them? It's Rav Meir and Acher standing there. Ein Shalom Amar Hashem l'Rashayim. There will be no peace for the evil. Now this was the whole ploy. Rav Meir grabbed Acher by the collar. He says, "Come sit in the base medrash. I'll show you that you can do tshuva." He goes over to the little kid. The kid in a prepubescent voice is like, "There's no peace for the evil." This did not work out well. So he's like, "Fine." Then he goes to another one. And Amar Le Lianuka, he says to the kid who's sitting in the other shul down the block. He's like walking up and down to it. So he says, Psokli Psukha, tell me what exactly is going on. What pasuk are you learning? Amar Lo, Kim Techabsi Beneser, Batar Bilach Boris. If you're going to clean yourself with Neser and Boris, two cleaning agents, still, the stain of your sin is still in front of me. This is 0 for 2, really not going well. Rav Meir is getting a little frustrated. And it's not helping the Acher either, because it's exacerbating his own perspective that really there's no tshuva for Acher. They went to a third one. Omar Le Lianuka, turning to the top of Tezvav Medbeis, they said to the child in the third base medrash, "What's your pasuk? Psokli Pesukha. Omar Le Ve'at Shadud, you the troubled one. Mata Asi Kitil Bashi Shani. Who cares if you wear nice clothes? Ki Sa'adi Adi Zahav. If you put on golden garments, Ki Sikari Befuch Einayich. You're going to put makeup on your eyes. And still, Lashav Tisiafi. Still, it's going to be the case that you're doing all of this for nothing. No room for tshuva for you, Acher. You're all done." They went to the fourth shul. Rav Meir dragged Acher to 13 different Batei Knesios, all using this portal of Nevuah, whatever the word is, to understand what the child is learning as a reference to what we're learning, to what we need. Kulhu pasku leiki gavna. 13 for 13. Every last one of them quoted a pasuk that indicated that Acher has no room for tshuva. Lebasra, in the final place, Amar Le Psokli Psukha, they went to the final place and they said to a child, "Tell me what you're learning." Amar Le, Ula Rasha Amar Elokim Malacha L'Saper Chuke. You have no right to even talk about my Torah anymore. You're a Rasha, says Hashem, and you can't talk about my Torah. But Hahu Yunuka have a Megam Game Belishna. This particular child had a lisp or some type of speech impediment, and instead of saying what the pasuk was of Ula Rasha Amar Elokim, Ishtama, it sounded like Kima de Amar Le Ula Elisha Amar Elokim. So the pasuk really says, line 6 over here, Ula Rasha Amar Elokim, but the kid mumbled the words, Ula Elisha Amar Elokim, Malacha L'Saper Chuki, and he got so angry. Ika de Amre, some say Sakina Haba Bahade, he had a knife with him. The Kare Vishadre, the Tleisar Bekinishta, he killed either the child or he cut up the cloth, whichever one, unclear from the Gemara. It does say Bahade, the Kare, but in Aramaic or in Hebrew with a vav at the end, like it's either him or it. We don't know which one. So the Rishonim discussed this. The unfortunately discussed it. Who cares? He's a guy. Doesn't keep halacha. He's a Jew, but he doesn't care. He doesn't keep halacha. The first thing he did, it's acher. No, it's acher. So that's version 1 of what he did. Vika de Amre, some say that Acher really didn't do anything physical. Omar, ihavoi biyadi sakin. If in fact I had a knife, then maybe I would have done some damage. Have a karanali, then I would have killed him. 10 lines down, 2 lines before the middle width lines. The Gemara says, finally, when Acher died, Amre, lo meidan lidaine, we can't give judgment to him to bring him to Gehenna. We also can't bring him in to Gan Eden. Lo meidan lidaine mishum da'asak be'oraisa. We can't bring him straight to Gehenna because he learned Torah. A wonderful protection from Gehenna is Talmud Torah. And we can't bring him straight to Gan Eden because he definitely did Averas. A bad way to get yourself out of Gehenna is to do Chatayim. Amar Rav Meir, mutav de lidaini v'leisi la'alma da'asi. It's better that he should be subject to the judgment of Gehenna, and then in the end up in Alma da'asi in Gan Eden. And then he says the following: Masai Amus. This is who's talking now? It's. Yes, Rav Meir is still talking. I got confused because you'll see in a second why I got confused. Rav Meir says that when he dies, you will see smoke coming out of the kever of Acher. Why? Because he said, I'm going to schlep him down to Gehenna so that he can have the din, and that will end up that he can be La'asid Lavo, that he can be in Gan Eden. That's the best thing to do. When in fact he died, that's exactly what happened. People then saw smoke rising from the kever of Elisha ben Avuya because Rav Meir took care of it to make sure that his neshama was put down in Gehenna, so that in turn he'll end up in Olam HaEmes and Olam Haba. Amar Rav Yochanan, just think about generations, right? This is a long time passing. Many generations turn between Rav Meir and Rav Yochanan. We're not even in the times of Tanaim anymore. Amar Rav Yochanan, he heard this story about Rav Meir. Gvurta lemikla rabbe. You brought him down to Gehenna to burn him. That doesn't make sense. Chad Haba Binana. He was one of them who was with us. Elisha ben Avuya was one of us. He was a Talmud Chacham. Before he went off the derech, he was a Talmud Chacham. There's no way that we could have saved him from the din of Gehenna. Rav Yochanan says, "Inakte biyad." If I took him by hand, man mirmi leman. Is someone going to say anything to me? I'm going to walk him straight to the pearly white gates. He's not going to go to Gehenna anymore. Amar, and Rav Yochanan said, Masaya Mus, that he says that when he was to die, I'm going to take him out of Gehenna and I'm going to walk him to the pearly white gates of Gan Eden and get him out of this terrible scenario. He was one of us. It's not for everyone, but for someone who was a lamdan, for someone who was a learner, for someone who was a Talmud Chacham, and he happened to have gone off the derech Nebuch. It's an unfortunate scenario, but still, it's not right to let him sit in Gehenna. We should be able to save him. And that's exactly what happened. Says the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down, 6th line into the middle with lines. When Rav Yochanan died, he took matters into his own hand and he pulled Acher out of Gehenna, and the smoke stopped emanating from that kever. Pasach aleh, who saftana, somebody said in regards to Rav Yochanan, afilu shomer Pesach lo amar lefanecha Rabbeinu. Even the guards at the pearly white gates could not stop Rav Yochanan from schlepping this person who was not keeping halacha at this point in his life. No one could stop him. 1/3 of the way down, the Gemara says, Bito shel Acher asya lekame de Rebbe. The daughter of Acher came in front of Rebbe. Amra le, she says to Rebbe, Rebbe Parnaseni, I need you to feed me, I have no money. Amar la bas mi'at, he didn't know who she was. He said, who are you? Amar lo, she said, Bito shel Acher ani, I am the daughter of Acher. Amar la, he says to her, Adain yesh mizar ba'olam. How can it be that he still has progeny in the world? Get that, it was good, progeny. Says the Gemara, Vaksiv, lo nin v'lo neched be'amo ve'ein sari bim gurab, that there are no generations, no grandchildren, no great-grandchildren. There's no one left from people who are evil. Now, this pasuk is in Eov, and obviously Acher lived long after that. But in that context, the pasuk is coming to tell us that when people are evil, they don't have a continuity of generations. So Amr lo, she said to him, Zechor l'toraso, ve'al tizkor ma'asav. You should remember his Torah, and you should not remember his actions, separating the two from one another. Miyad yarda eish v'sichsecha safsalo shel Rebbe. Immediately, when she said that, fire came out from the heavens and singed the bench that Rebbe was sitting on. And Rebbe broke into tears. Bacha Rebbe v'amar, he cried and said, Umam, if someone like Acher is going to make a gnus, a disgrace of halacha, and still a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to protect him in this way from showing me a nes nigla that my bench got singed because I didn't treat him with appropriate kavod, then what about l'mishtabchen ba halachas kama v'kama? Then those of us who are praiseworthy of the Torah, those of us who keep halacha as we should, so then halachas kama v'kama, all the more so that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to tend to our kavod. Then the Gemara asks a question that certainly bothered me, and I would imagine bothered you as well. What is going on here that Reb Meir is learning from Acher when Acher's off the derech? Acher's literally riding a horse on Shabbos, and we're like, oh, can I ask you a shaila in halacha? So I have a dear friend like this. We spent many years together as friends. Grew up in a frumish home, and he got from a very serious learner, very, very intelligent guy, and completely dropped everything. I mean, Trev, Shabbos gone out the window. He's holding in Hilchos Bishul. He is holding in Hilchos Bishul and nuance. Oh yeah, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chazon Ish, he's holding. Doesn't work. Keep Mamish Mechal Shabbos Bifar Hesia. Totally. That's like he was never Acher, but he was never Talmud Chacham like Acher. But the point is that these people exist. They still exist. How can you learn Torah from them? That's the Gemara's question halfway down on Tes Vav Midbeis. The Rav Meir, Heichi Gamar Tormi Pumida Acher. How could you possibly learn anything from Acher? He's such a hypocrite. He's sitting here, Talmud Chacham, and then all of a sudden he's with a Zona, he's being Mechal Shabbos. It's not normal. So says the Gemara, that should not be allowed. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. What does this mean? The kohen that you're going to learn from Torah. So says the Gemara, if the Rebbe that you're learning from is similar to a Malach Hashem Tzivakos, then Yivakru Torah Mipiv. That's when you ask to learn Torah from him. But if he's not that person who really is a wholesome human being where his behavior and his values match, so how could Rav Meir learn from Acher, who was really not a frum guy anymore? He was really off the derech. He was Yatza L'Tar B'Surah. So says the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish, Rav Meir Kra Ashkach V'Darash. Rav Meir actually was making an inference from a different pasuk. The pasuk says, Hat Oznecha Ushma Divrei Chachamim. You should turn your ear and listen to the wise. V'libcha, but your heart, Tashis L'daiti. You should lean over to me, says Hashem. Not L'daitam Lo Ne'emar, not to the Rebbe. That's not what you should do. Ella L'daiti, to the Das of Hashem, implying that you could listen to the Torah from your Rebbe. However, you have to turn your Das to me, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, good. Reb Chanina Amar Mehacha, another pasuk with a similar idea. Shema biti uri ve'ati oznech v'shachachi imachu be'savich. You can listen to the information and not listen to the house of your father. Same idea, where the values, the Torah, that learning that you're doing can come from Acher, but don't worry about the fact that he's not from anymore. So says the Gemara, at least Rav Meir had a pasuk. But then the Gemara says, Kashu Krei Hadade. We still have two psukim. One seems to say that you have to be like a Malach Hashem Tzavakos. And the other one seems to say that no, you don't have to listen to your Rebbe only if he's a Malach Hashem Tzavakos. You just have to lean on a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Gemara, Lo Kasha Haba Gadol Haba Katan. When a person is big, when a person is small. What the Gemara means here is that when a person is mature, so they can bifurcate that which is worth keeping and throw out the rest. So you can listen to someone like Acher if they have wisdom to share, but then you have to throw out everything that he says that's garbage. And in the other case, when there's a katan, when there's a child or someone who's not mature, doesn't have the mental stamina to reject the bad information, and he doesn't know how to throw out the bad stuff, so then he should only learn from a Rebbe who's like a Malach Hashem Tzavakos. Kiyasa Rav Dimi, 2/3 of the way down, Amar, he said, he ate the flesh of the fruit and then threw everything else of the fruit out. Rav Meir was able to do this, so he didn't mind. Maybe he minded, but it didn't hurt him, the fact that he was watching his Rebbe Elisha ben Avuya and not keep halacha while he was teaching Torah. Darash Rabba, what does it mean that we this pasuk is basically comparing Talmidei Chachamim to a tree, and then a particular tree in this case? Why are the Talmidei Chachamim compared to a nut? Lomar lach, ma egos ze afal pishem luchlach b'titu b'tzoa ein ma shebesochonimas. Peanuts grow on the ground. Peanuts not really a nut, but let's just use it as an example. Filthy on the outside, but the peanuts on the inside are untouched. So says the Gemara, the same is true here. Af Talmid Chacham, af al pisha sarach. Even if on the outside his behaviors are disgusting, ein Torah sanimesas. The Torah that he's already imbibed, that he's already learned, so then that never gets disgusting. Ashkechei Rabba Bar Shila leEliyahu. Rabba Bar Shila bumped into Eliyahu Hanavi. Amar lei, Ma'ika Avid HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Unbelievable question. What is Hashem doing right now? Eliyahu Hanavi was on the inside track, and he says, Amar lei, Ka'amar Shmaisami Pumayhu Dekulu Rabbanan. He's repeating over Torah from all the rabbis. However, Umipume de Rav Meir lo Ka'amar. But when it comes to Rav Meir was not going to be quoted because Rav Meir learned from Acher, and that seems to be inappropriate. That doesn't really flow from the Gemara, because the Gemara seemed to say that Rav Meir actually had a track to follow. But that's why this Gemara is being brought here, to show a contrasting opinion about Rav Meir's approach. Was it right? Was it wrong? So Amar Le, the Gemara then says, Amai, I don't understand. Says Rabba Bar Shila to Eliyahu, why is that a problem? The reason why was because he learned from Acher. Amar Le Amai, why is that problematic? Rab Meir Rimon Matzah Tocha Achal Klipos Zarak. He didn't do it the wrong way. He did it the right way. He opened a pomegranate, he ate the seeds, and he threw out everything else. He did exactly what he should based on the Pshat and the Psukim. Kan Begadol, Kan Bekatan. He did exactly what the Psukim said he should do. So it says the Gemara, wow, good argument. Eliyahu Hanavi embraced that argument. So did HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amar Le Hashta Ka'amar. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying a maimer from Meir. Meir Beni, Meir, my son, Omer, what did he say? When a person is in a difficult straits, Shechina ma lashon omeretz. What is the lashon omeretz? What is the Shechina saying about himself? Kalani miroshi, this is so difficult for my head, it's a burden for me. Kalani mizroi, it's difficult for my arm, meaning it's a burden for me. Similar language, poetic. Im kacha kadosh baruch hu mitzar al daman shel rishoyim. If this is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels about the daman shel rishoyim, kal v'chomer al daman shel tzadikim shenishbach. All the more so for the righteous people. 2 lines before the very wide lines on Tes Vav Amud Aleph, about 12 lines from the bottom. Ashkechei Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda the Tali be'ivra the dasha v'kabachi. Shmuel saw that Rabbi Yehuda, his Talmud, was standing by the door jamb and crying. Amar le Shirina, bright one, amai kabachis, why are you crying? Amarle, he says to him, "Mi zutra my dechsibu rabbanon." Is it so small what the rabbis say based on the pasuk? Aye sofer, aye shokel, aye sofer es hamigdalim. Where is the sofer, which literally means a scribe or a counter? Aye shokel, where is the one who is taking? We'll see what all these mean. And aye sofer es hamigdalim, the one who counts the towers. Aye sofer, what does that mean? Shahayu sofrim kol osios shebatorah. There are people who counted every letter of the Torah, meaning they were knowledgeable in all elements of the Torah. Aye shokel, what does that mean? Shahayu shoklim kalam v'chamorim shebatorah. They were able to be shakla b'tarya. There were different translations of the word shoklin. They were able to understand the what was light and what was heavy in the Torah. What's the next part of the pasuk? Aye sofer es hamigdalim, to count the towers. Fascinating Gemara. The Gemara says, second of the very wide lines, Tez Vavam Mid Beis, Shahayu shonen, Aye sofer es hamigdalim, Shahayu shonen, shlosh me'os halachos, b'migdal haporeach be'avir. They were able to teach 300 halachos from the tower that floats in the air. We don't have time to read this Rashi, but take a look at Rashi later, a third of the way down, b'migdal haporeach be'avir, that we're talking about the letter lamed, which is poreach be'avir. The top of the lamed is actually a vav. So the way that it looks is that the bottom is a chaf, and the top is a vav that leans outward. So that's what it looks like. And the Gemara says there were 300 halachos that were learned from there. So, and then the continuation of Rabbi Yehuda's concern was as follows. Rav Ami added to this, Tlas mea boi, there were 300 questions that they had asked about b'migdal haporech ba'avir, about the letter lamed. Vitnan gimel malachim v'arba hedyotos ein lam chelek lo lamaba. And at the same time, we have a Mishnah that says that there were 3 kings and 4 people who did not have olam haba, and 2 of those people were Doeg and Achitofel. So anan matahe alon, matahavi alon. They didn't have olam haba. They were able to ask 300 kashas in halacha on just the letter lamed. That's an unbelievable thing. So that's very troubling to Rabbi Yehuda. So Amar Le, Shmuel says back to him, Shinana, bright one, Tina ha'sev. There was something impure, something rotten inside of them, and it just came out now. Tina is mud, something disgusting. Okay, what was disgusting about Acher? Acher Mai, says the Gemara, and there's a whole raid on this in the Meforshim. Zemer Yavani lo pasak mipume. He was singing a Greek song; it wouldn't leave his lips. The Meforshim say this was before he went off the derech. So what does it mean the song was Greek? Is it about music? So some of the Mefarshim say it's based on the Gemara Maseches Gittin that says Zimra minal and Asr, that with the Churban Beis HaMikdash, we're not supposed to really sing. It's not really the right thing to do. But Moshe Feinstein in his Chuvas writes that it's really only appropriate to sing songs that are located in a bencher. But the Kumzitzin that we have are really inappropriate post-Churban. Almost nobody holds of that, but those who were in his orbit, really, he only would sing Ma'yedidus and whatever was actually in the bencher. Otherwise, he wouldn't sing. Was this a violation? Some of Mefarshim say no. It's the fact that it was Greek, that the Greek were the Hellenists and they focused on the physicality over the spirituality. Whatever the flaw is, Elisha ben Avuya had something going on that was not right. Amru Allah, they said about him, Alacher, when he would stand up in the base medrash, Harbe Sifrei Minin Noshrim Micheko, a whole bunch of Sfarim would fall from his lap that were philosophical books, that were heretical books. He had them sitting in his lap. Unbelievable. So this was a long time coming. This wasn't, yes, he was Kotzetz Benetios, but there was something that preceded that. That was the Tina Shahaisa Belivo. Something was rotten. It just came out later. So we see this as grown adults. The older we get, we look back at our own childhood and the Tina Shahaisa Belivo, our flaws come out, our character flaws come out. That's just what happens with time. If you're even a marginally introspective person, you'll find your flaws over time. Some of them require other people to tell you. Some of them require children to highlight them for you, whatever it is, but we have to come up with them at some point. So it says the Gemara as follows. Shal Nimus Hagardius Rab Meir. Nimus, who was a weaver, he asked Rab Meir, Kol Imar de Nachis Liyoris Salik. All wool that goes into the dye, will it absorb liquid? So this is obviously a mashal. And what the Gemara is really asking is, anyone who learns Torah, will they absorb that Torah? Says the Gemara, Amarle, kol man to have a naki agavime salik. Anyone for whom it was clean from its mother when it was shorn from the animal, then yeah, no problem. If it's still clean, then yes. Kol de lo have a naki agavime lo salik. And if it wasn't clean from its mother, then it will not. Here we need Rashi because it just is too whatever. Just take a look at Rashi in 9 lines from the bottom. Kol de naki agavime shalom nislach lich legiza during the shearing process, then ola lo tzvo, the color will absorb. Klomar. Kol sheyiras cheto kodemes lechochmaso. Anyone who places yiras shamayim before their wisdom, olalo, then their Torah is going to absorb. came near Be'enai, Verabosai Meforshim, a different approach, but fine, you're whatever. That's a basic approach that Rashi indicates, is that if a person is going to be learning Torah with Yiras Shamayim, such that it's not about me, it's about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understanding him more, so then your Torah will be absorbed. 2 lines from the bottom. Let's talk about Rabbi Akiva, the last of the 4 who went into the Pardes. Rabbi Akiva, Allah b'shalom v'yara b'shalom. V'alav akasiv omer mashcheni acharecha narutza. Drawn after you, we will run. They actually did want to push him out. And Amar of the Pardes. I don't know what these words mean. We'll just translate them as they sound. He is able to utilize my honor. So again, it's very hard to understand exactly what that means. Top of Tezayin Amud Aleph, my darash. How was it? What drasha did Rabbi Akiva make to be nichnas l'shalom? That wasn't nichnas. What was the language? Allah b'shalom v'yara b'shalom. How did he know what to do? So admittedly, some of these drashas are very difficult to understand, but we'll read them anyways. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Amar Rav Yochanan. V'asa merivavos kodesh. He came from myriads of holiness. Os hu berivavos shalo. There was some type of sign within the myriads that Rabbi Akiva was able to discern, and therefore he knew not to look at that particular place that was a glimpse of a portion of Hashem. Rabbi Abo Amar dagul merivava. Similar words in the pasuk. Dagul merivava. Dugma hu berivava shalo. There was some type of dugma, a sample, some type of shape, whatever it was, berivava shalo, in the myriads there that he saw. Reish Lakish Amar Hashem tzivakos shemo. Adon hu b'tzeva. He was a master in his legions. And these are all reasons as to how Rabbi Akiva possibly knew not to look certain places when he was in the Pardes. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rav Yochanan, lo beruach Hashem. We know that Hashem is not in wind. Ve'achar haruach rash. After wind there was noise. V'lo berash Hashem. The pasuk says that that Hashem is not part of sound. Ve'achar harash eish. V'lo be'esh Hashem. He saw fire. He knew that he wasn't in Hashem. But then after that, ve'achar ha'esh kol demamad daka. Very poetic language that we have called from Unisana Tokev, that in this very, very silent moment, that is where Hashem is. Hashem over. That's how he knew not to look. That's how he knew not to look. All right, let's get to the Mishnah. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbi, the rest is easier. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis teach us. Shisha dvarim, ne'amru b'shedim. There are 6 things that we say about demons. Shlosha kimalache hashar. What? It's going real easy. We're just on the shade. I'm just less scared to talk about the demons than I am to talk about my classic. Yeah, it's a nice transition. It's a smooth transition. Shlosha kimalache hasharis. There are 3 things about shedim that are similar to the loftiest of angels. V'shlosha kibnei adam, and 3 of them are like people. Shlosha kimalache hasharis. What are the 3 that are similar to the angelic beings? Yesh lahem kanafayim kimalache hasharis. They have wings. V'tasim misofa olamad sofa. They can travel the whole galaxy, whatever that means. Kimalache hasharis. V'yodin mash asidios kimalache hasharis. They also know the future. Says the Gemara, Yodin sal kadaitach. They know the future. Nobody knows the future except Hashem. How does that work? It says the Gemara, Elashomen me'achorei apargud kimalach eshrei. You're right, they don't know the future, but their ears are able to hear what happens behind the curtain. What about the 3 features of the shedim that are like people? Shlosha kivnei adam, ochlin v'shosim kivnei adam. There are those who eat, there are those. The shedim eat and drink like people. Parin v'ravin kivnei adam. They have children by procreating. Umesim kivnei adam. They can also die. Let's talk about people. Shisha dvarim ne'emru b'vnei adam. There are 6 things that people say, that we say about man. Shlosha kimalache asharis. 3 are like angels, and shlosha kibehema. 3 are like animals. Shlosha kimalache asharish, the 3 elements of us, we human beings, that are similar to the celestial beings up on high. Yesh lahem das kimalache asharish. We can have wisdom like they have. Umehalchen b'koma zakufa kimalache asharish. We stand up straight on 2 feet, just like the malachim do. Umesaprin b'lashon hakodesh kimalache asharish. We also can speak in Hebrew like the malache asharish. What are the 3 things that are similar to an animal? 2 lines before the wide lines. Tezayin Amud Aleph. Shlosha kibehema. What are the features that we have that are similar to animals? Not like we don't know what they are, but we should call them out. Ochlin v'shosin kibehema. We eat like animals. Parin v'ravin kibehema. We have pruervu like animals. Umotziin rei kibehema. We also go to the bathroom like animals. First of the middle width lines. We said in our Mishnah, anyone who looks at the following 4 things would have been better had he never been created. And we said, we said what's above, what's below, what's before, and what's after. So the Gemara says bishlama, and when I read this bishlama, I still don't understand it. But the Gemara says, of course, everybody knows that those questions I understand why that's problematic. But what happened before? Whatever happened before the earth was created, it just was. Who cares cares what it was? Why can't you ask about it? Says the Gemara. So the Gemara responds 3 lines into the Y lines halfway down. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, Damar Tarvayu. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar give a mashal. Mashal melech basar v'dam. Just imagine a king of flesh and blood. Shamar la'avadav, who says to his servants, but benu li palterin gedolin al ha'ashpa. There's a big garbage dump here, and I'd like you to cover it over and build me a beautiful palace. So halchu banu lo. They went and they built a beautiful palace for the king. Ein ritzono shel melech lahazkir sham ashpa. No, nobody wants to go back and say that there's ashpa. So what's the mashal? So apparently the concern was that not that what was before the physical earth was garbage, because there was nothing physical earth before garbage. But the concern that the Mefarshim here explain is that a person will have significant misunderstandings about that period of time of prior to creation, and it will lead to significant heresy, and therefore we should not be learning about it. Kol shelo chas al kvod kono, anyone who's not sensitive to the honor of the creator of the world, rasui lo shelo ba la'olam, he too it would have been better had he never come to the world. Maihi, what is this violation of not being chas al kvod kono? Rabbi Abba Omar zeh mistakel b'keshes. That's someone who looks at a rainbow. We'll dig into this more in a moment. Rabbi Yosef Omar zeha over aver b'seiser. No, it's considered to be not being chas al kvod kono if you do an avera in private. Let's go through them. Mistakel b'keshes. How do we know that one is not allowed to look at a keshes, at a rainbow? D'chsiv kimare hakeshes. Just like the rainbow that we see in a cloud on a rainy day, so too so too the light that surrounds Hashem, which of course you're not allowed to look at it because it says Cain. Similarly, therefore you cannot look at a rainbow. This is discussed in the Mefarshim. It's actually problematic to say you can't look at a rainbow because we make a bracha on a rainbow. How can you make a bracha without looking? So there's a discussion about what this means. Are you allowed to look but not stare? These are discussions in poskim. It's quoted in Shulchan Aruch, this discussion to some degree, really more in the Mishnah Berurah and in the Nosei Kelim than in the Shulchan Aruch itself. Take a look over there. Rabbi Yosef Amar Zeh over Aver B'Seiser Kid Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak was of the opinion as follows. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak 2/3 of the way down. Kol over Aver B'Seiser. Anyone who does an Aver in private, Ki'ilu Dochek Ragli Ashchina. It's as if you pushed away the feet of the Shekhinah. Why? Because I'm not going to do an Aveira in public, but in private, Hashem's not there. That's effectively what's going on. Obviously, a person has some Yirah Shamayim of people on the outside, which is why we're better behaved around our peers than we are when we're by ourselves. And a pasuk to support this idea, Shneimar Ko Amar Hashem HaShamayim Ki Siva Aretz Hadom Ragli. In Shamayim, everybody sees me, but on the ground, it's that's just my feet are there, and it's your Dochek Ragli Ashchina that's on the ground when you do an Aveira. Says the Gemara, Eini, that doesn't sound right to say that doing an Aveira B'Seiser is wrong. We already learned this Gemara that sometimes if you know you're going to do an Aveira, you should dafka do it in private. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Ilah Hazakin. He says, if a person sees a scenario in which he is guaranteed to fail, don't trick yourself. A scenario where you're guaranteed to fail. You should go to a place where nobody knows you. Wear clothes that are not your regular clothes. Wear black clothes. And wrap your head in black. And do the Aveira you need to do. Be a mensch about it. You're going to do something wrong, do it in a way where it's not a chilul shem shamayim. So how can you tell me that it means that you're not being respectful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's because you did an Aveira in private. That's not true. You're dafka supposed to do that. So says the Gemara, lo kasha. This is not a stira. Right? In one case, you were able to really beat your Yetzer Hara, but you did it. In that case, that's not being chasal kvod kon. You should be respectful. And lo matzi kaif leyitzrei, when a person knows that they cannot beat their Yetzer Hara, and there's a big difference between those two, being able and not being able to. So if you know you can't beat your Yetzer Hara, that's when you take the advice of Rabbi Laha Zaken and go to this place where nobody knows you. Darash Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani. Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani gave a drasha miturgamane de Reish Lakish, from the translator of Reish Lakish. Kol mistakel b'shlosh advarim einav keos. If a person looks at any of the following three things, his eyes will become weakened. B'keshes uvenasi uvekohanim, looking at a rainbow, looking at a nasi, at whoever was the leader of the time, uvekohanim, and kohanim who were duchening. B'keshes d'chsiv, the same pasuk we saw before, kamara kes asher yevanon b'yom hageshem humar d'mus kvod Hashem, that's representative or equivalent to the keshes is equivalent to Hashem in some way, to his demus kavod, an appearance of his kavod. That's not allowed, and therefore that can damage your eyes because it speaks about mara, it speaks about vision. The nasi, when it comes to the leader, dichsi v'nachas v'nasata mehodcha Allah, he will give of his hod, of his majesty that he got from Hashem to you. So there's some shechina there which is bad for you. Hamistakel b'kohan b'zman shebeis hamikdash kaim, during the times of the Beis Hamikdash when they were duchaning, shayu omden al duchanan, they were standing up on the stage and they were umevarchen es Yisrael. How would they do so? B'shem hameforish, they would do so with one of Hashem's explicit names, and because of that, you weren't allowed to look. That's not right. And even now we have a custom to not look. Is it actually damaging? They have talesim covering their hands. What does it actually mean? I don't know. Next, Darash Rabbi Yehuda Breb Nachmeni mitargamane de Reish Lakish, another drasha from the Miturgaman of Reish Lakish. What does the pasuk mean when it says Al Tamenu Bereya Al Tivtechu Be'aluf? You should not trust a friend, and you should not trust the aluf, the general or the master. Im Yomar Lecha Yetzer Hara Chatov HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mochel. If your Yetzer Hara says you do an Aveira, don't worry, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will forgive you. Al Ta'amein, do not believe that Yetzer Hara. That's not right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't forgive you when you're intentionally sinning with the hopes of getting forgiveness afterwards. Shneimar Al Ta'amein Bereya Ve'ein Rea Ela Yetzer Hara. Shneimar Ki Yetzer Lev Ha'adam Ra. That Yetzer and Ra are in the same. So we know that that's the case. Ve'ein Aluf Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It says that Al Tivtechu Be'aluf. Don't trust in the aluf to give you forgiveness when you're intentionally violating halacha. In aluf Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shneimar Alufei Neurei Ata. I Shema Tomar Mi Me'idbi. I'm going to do an Aveira. Nobody's with me. Who's going to give testimony to my Aveira? Almost at the Mishnah. Let's finish up. Here is who's going to testify against us when we do Aveiras in private. Avnei Beiso V'Koros Beiso Shalarim Me'idim. The stones of your house and the beams of your house will testify against you. Shneimar Ki Even Mikir Tizak. The stones from the wall will cry out. What is this word? V'chapim? V'kafis? Yeah. And you'll hear that the wood will answer for what you've done. That's the witness. Your own neshama is going to give testimony. For that which is in your chest, then you should be careful for what you say. What is it that lies within the chest of a man? This is a person's soul. The two malachim that walk with you, they're the ones who are going to give testimony against you. And the last one, your whole body is going to testify against you. Even your own body will talk about it. And that's why the Gemara says that even when you're on your own, one should be careful not to do Aveiras. We'll stop here. On Shabbos, we will pick up with Daf Tez Zayin and with Beis and Daf Yud Zayin. Wishing you all a beautiful night.